We've just had more of an explosion of people claiming this stuff is paranormal when it clearly isn't. Because now everybody can take those photos on the camera that's always in their hand or always in their pocket. So there's just a higher volume of photos coming in that are bogus.
Yeah.
And a higher volume of people that don't want to hear you tell them when the photo is bogus. I mean, we get people that send us photos and want our opinions of them. And I always say the same thing. Here's what I think, but may I put it out to our audience and see what our audience has to say? Because I don't ever want to just give my own opinion about something. Because A, we have built this following and network of people, so why not get multiple opinions if you can?
Yeah.
But B, I wasn't there when the picture was taken. I don't know all the conditions. I have to take your word for it. So I'm not really qualified to give you a definitive answer. I can say, here's what I think it is, but I can't tell you for sure that that's what it is. If I say, hey, it really looks like cigarette smoke to me, and you tell me there was nobody smoking anywhere near that photo, I have to take your word for it. Even though to me, I know exactly what cigarette smoke looks like in a photo, and that's cigarette smoke. But there's that little bit of doubt because I wasn't there.
You're right. Yeah.
So that's why if somebody sends a photo, I always say, hey, let me put it out there. And the only time that I ever have people ever say, gee, I really wish you wouldn't do that, like I kind of just want to keep it between us, the only time it's ever that type of a situation is when it's an orb photo. When somebody sends me an orb photo and they say, not everybody that sends one, but when that does happen, it's almost always an orb photo. Because they know deep down inside that I'm probably right. And if they put it out there and they get 400 people telling them the same thing I'm telling them, then they have no choice but to believe it. But if it's only me telling them, then they can say, well, I disagree, and go on their way. But we talked about this years ago, that as we made the move to digital, maybe a lot of these problems would start to go away. That maybe having higher quality and better megapixels for our photos and being able to, actually check the EXIF data and see if somebody has manipulated a photo in Photoshop. As this technology has progressed, it would make it harder to claim that something's a paranormal photograph. The opposite has happened. We've just had more of an explosion of people claiming this stuff is paranormal when it clearly isn't. Because now everybody can take those photos on the camera that's always in their hand or always in their pocket. So there's just a higher volume of photos coming in that are bogus.
Yeah.
And a higher volume of people that don't want to hear you tell them when the photo is bogus. So it's my new approach is when somebody sends me a photo and says, hey, what do you think this is? I think I caught orbs in my photo. Yup, it's definitely orbs. Because it is.
Yeah.
But you don't want me to explain to you why it's an orb. I can clearly see that it's a moth. I can clearly see the wings and the body and the fluttering action, but you don't want to hear that. You want to think it's Aunt Mabel. So it's Aunt Mabel to you. That's fine. So I'll just say it's an unexplained orb. Because it's just not worth it. It's not worth trying to teach people. If somebody comes at me and says, hey, I'm a paranormal investigator and I'm learning, and then I'll say, okay, well, I think it could be dust, and here's why, and here's where you can look for these certain telltale signs, and those people are usually like, thanks. But when it's just a random person that wants to share with you their photograph, there's nothing you can say. There's nothing you can say. I try to go through the same process to some degree with people who go out to see psychics and mediums who we know are just cold reading them. If we know that somebody's bogus, but they're going out and they're getting these readings done, and we know from as soon as they start telling us what happened. Oh, what do you mean you told them that you wanted to talk to your grandmother who died? Why'd you go in there telling them that right away? Well, because I didn't want to waste any time. I want to get ready. So you've already ruined it. You've already put that out there, and now it's easy for them to manipulate you. And again, not every psychic does, but there are ones that do. And so you try to explain to them that they should take that all with a grain of salt, and they don't want to hear it. So that's why, and I've argued with Stephanie about this on the show before, because being a legitimate psychic medium, she doesn't like it when, just the same way, you know, a doctor doesn't like it if somebody's like, hey, I can take out your spleen in my van. You know, it makes a mockery of what it is that they do.
Yeah.
So I can totally understand where she's coming from. And I try to say, hey, listen, if somebody goes and it makes them feel better, then what's the harm? But she tells me all the time there is a harm, because you're harming what it is that she does. You're harming the energy that's being put out there into the universe, and you are harming that person. Even though you think you're helping them, you're making them now dependent on somebody who's a fraud.